call us to order. 6 p.m., right on the dose. Roll call, Barb, Ron, and Kat, Jason, Deb, Paula. Approval of last month's minutes.
I move.
I'll second.
Good to go. We have persons requesting time and correspondence. You can either, do you want to speak now or you can wait? We were going to talk about the fields during the new business as well.
Yeah, and I don't really have any major objective other than, well, I'm going to introduce myself, Dan George, North South Fayette Soccer Association. I know several of you already. Been on the board for 6 years. I do a lot of the scheduling and stuff. So, yeah, the reason why I'm here is because I know, thankfully, we're excited about the turf at Fayette. That's awesome. So, since it's happening now, discussions on time and all that stuff, I figured I'd just come here. I know Vanessa came, Vanessa and Steve both kind of the last couple of meetings I wasn't able to, but since I was able to come to this one, I figured I'd just come and listen and see what's going on. But yeah, I don't know how these meetings work. I've never been to any, so if there's something that you guys need to discuss, I need to leave the room.
No. It's
There's nothing.
Yeah,
We're pretty informal.
Yeah.
Dan, how do you spell your last name?
Deutschendorf, E-T-S-C-H.
I actually do have personnel stuff this year. Or this year, because I do have personnel, actually,
Okay.
at the end.
Okay.
Yep.
I feel like I'm on trial.
Yeah. You've crossed the bar. You're all right.
Whenever we do talk about things, and you have to come to this mic when we do talk about things, because that will be recorded.
We have to be recorded.
I
There's
think
no battery in that one.
Yeah, preferably up there if you don't mind.
I really feel like I'm like,
Oh yeah, it's informally formal, formally informal. Paula, director's report.
I have not got a chance to put it in written form, but kind of just a recap of the last couple months. Joy Through Fairview was a big success. The few changes we made, reducing the cars and some traffic helped a lot of positive feedback about that, and people really enjoyed having the lights up all year or all month. Few times they went out with like heavy rain shortage, but there's nothing we can do about that. But can't wait to have electric up to Fairview next year, because then we can really light up the park kind of on the Mayview side, and it's becoming something that we're being recognized for, which is pretty cool. I actually got a letter, no name to it, just signed as Peters Township resident that's jealous of your light display. Oh, wow. So that's pretty cool. They had family that lived here and came, and they were just really surprised and wish their community had something like that. So we're getting kind of recognized for it. And I relayed the message down to our parks crew. They put a lot of hours into putting those lights up, and I relayed it down to them. Kind of gave them free rein to use creativity with the lights and everything like that, and they did a phenomenal job. So
it was so cool driving through with my dog and looking at them, checking it out.
yeah, they were very passionate about it. Yeah. So we added a park crew member. He started right before Joy Through. Great addition. He's fantastic. So we are up to 3 now. We are down 1 with some personal time. So we have 4. One's kind of out right now. I will working on like an annual report, which I'll have for the Board of Commissioners next month, and then I'll bring it to you guys in February. I kind of just do a recap of all our programs, events, park projects, kind of all of that. We're gearing up, starting to plan our spring and summer activities already. Ian's working on that. So we're in just kind of planning mode. The ball fields, they're pouring some sidewalks and concrete fencings up, kind of still on track to finish up in the spring. 2 of the fields got the outfield seeded that they potentially could be full grown to get some play on by fall, and the bigger one probably not until like spring. But the infield is turf, so we're thinking about, securing off the grass and not letting little kids play on the turf part earlier on. The Board of Commissioners passed a capital budget that included funding to install lights on all 3 of those ball fields up there, as well as scoreboards and shade structures, like kind of giant permanent umbrellas by the splash pad. We'll go out in the grassy area for some more options around there. Capital projects also include the multi-purpose fields, which we touch on, and then the trails through Fairview, which I've discussed before, is kind of broken down in 2 projects. So the first kind of priority one is getting that sidewalk in along Recreation Road. It's just taking a lot of time because it has to go through PennDOT approval because it's their funding, but we did get approved for more funding through them. So that project will be completely paid for by grants, which will be over $1 million project. So that's pretty cool. My first project that's been completely paid for by grants.
Okay, so trails, that's the trails through Fairview?
Yeah. So the one along Recreation Road is through PennDOT funding, which since costs came in higher than what expected, they approved additional funding. From the Lafayette Pavilion up to the splash pad, it's completely paid for by grants. So then the nature trails will kind of be the second phase, still in design, with potential to kind of start late summer, kind of lined up after the main trail is kind of underway and constructing. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Old business, community center update, any update?
I don't remember I told you guys or not, but there is no money in the 2026 budget for any type of planning for a community center or anything like that. So I don't know if this year we want to kind of regroup and figure out our new game plan forward with what planning looks like or what, but that's the update on that.
When do they do their budget meetings?
We start budget process probably around like August, September.
Okay.
They'll do a budget workshop usually in October, November, with goal to approve by beginning of December.
So probably start hitting them May,
Yeah.
June. Okay.
I think maybe to get a game plan of what process we want to go through so we kind of know. I think we kind of briefly talked about, we think maybe a steering committee would be a good starting point, and that doesn't necessarily cost anything, getting those people together and figuring out what we're going to do, I guess. So maybe that's something we want to start here in the next couple months, see if we can get direction on that. And then for Miller's Run Road update, drawings are about 90% done. I've given some feedback. We're looking to do a collective meeting kind of with all parties involved to kind of go over the plans, make sure it's what we want, and what the sequencing of displacement of all parties involved will look like.
Okay. All right, and I think we also talked about tennis courts at the last meeting, and Paula provided some information on that as far as how the costs go. It's awesome that the USTA can contribute some money towards that, but there's also a lot of other funds that have to go into that.
It's kind of surprising how expensive
Everything's
court
expensive.
plus the adjacent requirements.
Yeah. When you're, it's the stormwater is most expensive. And whenever you're building something, I think it's beyond an acre, you're required to have a conservation permit, and their requirements are just crazy. So you're kind of at their beck and call of what stormwater management they're requiring. So, it comes down to park projects that's not necessarily just about like the amenity being added. It's the stormwater that has a lot of the costs that eat up it, so.
Yeah, I don't think most people realize.
Yeah. You can't just pave a court. You got to put all the piping in, and we add the parking lot. You have to do the piping and storm of that also because, parking is all, I never get the terminology right. It's not permissive. The rain doesn't go through it. So you have to allocate where it's going to go because we run off. Where like grass, a lot of it can go down into it, get some runoff, but not like concrete where there's none of it being absorbed. So yeah.
All right, new business, multipurpose fields.
Yes, so we got the rendering. So the update on that, had a great meeting before the holidays between Field Turf and Gibson Thomas and Township staff. The drawing with the stormwater and all that is like 90% done. And then we have like really hard numbers. They sent it out to 3 different contractors. So we got, one of the contractors came in about $250,000 under what Field Turf estimated, which is really good. So we're fine-tuning those numbers. Some stormwater had to change. There was Public Works told us about a water line that we have to avoid. So some minor changes, but we should have final numbers and contract to the Board of Commissioners for their next week's meeting. So once we sign that, Gibson Thomas, our engineer, once we sign that, we'll be locked in with Field Turf, and they can start, ordering the material and things like that. Currently waiting for an updated permit from the Conservation District. Takes about 6 to 8 weeks, but we've kind of already been in communication with them. They know it's coming down the pipe. They've already seen, half the drawings, so we're not expecting it to be that long. So hopefully to be ready and shovel in the ground by March. And then they estimate, I forget how many days they said, but done and ready before beginning of August, so good for Community Day and fall season. Yeah. So the rendering is for the lines. Yeah, if you don't mind stepping up there, thank you.
Yeah, can I at least make a point, I guess, from the timing perspective? We can at least put in a request, because I think football and us and cheerleader, can you hear me, by the way?
I think you have to hit the
No, push the
button.
button.
I think you have to hit the button,
Hit the little person button.
I think.
Not that it really matters, but anyway.
Yeah, it has to be recorded, I'm sorry.
Okay, I mean, I guess I was just gonna say, if it, do I?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. This is so strange. I'm not a public speaker at all, so I mean, forgive me, I'm gonna bumble a lot. But anyway, I was just gonna mention, so the 3 of us, we start pretty much early August. So if we can at least try to have a timeline in place, if we can get that before August 1st, not like towards the end of August. If it's like Community Day, then we're gonna miss the entire August. So it's especially important, I think, for the cheerleaders. They want, they're always busy in August, and we are too, and football, but they really do, are pretty active in August.
The sooner the better, definitely. We're kind of, like I said, it's not in our hands, it's in the Conservation District. So once we sign the contract with Field Turf, we're ready to go, they're ready to go. We just have to wait for that permit from the Conservation District. So unfortunately, it's not in our hands, but we're wanting to get start as soon as possible.
Yeah, I just want to point out those dates, because that is kind of relevant. Whether it's August 1st or September 1st, that's definitely relevant for us. Not that you can do much about it, but at least so you have that date in mind.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
I hope.
I was actually,
I hope.
I don't know why I was thinking. I mean, I guess realistically speaking, it was always going to be next spring, and we were going to be offline for all of fall, but we were going to be offline all spring, and that's definitely going to be a problem, which I think you already know. So.
Yep.
But
Yep, so I'm in communication. I always setting a meeting with all associations, kind of already gave them a heads up that spring was offline. I kind of told them that like back October, November, so well aware of that. Reached out to Hunting Ridge for permission to use their field again, which lacrosse has used, and emailed Mark Keener to set up a meeting. Don't know how much the school is going to come through, because they're also adding some sports. They added girls flag football, and IS will be under construction. So still going to meet with the school, but he already did say, this year is going to stink for all of us. So we're going to, work with them, but it's not too promising. Just all the other fields scheduling's going to be really tight. Whether we have to rent portable lights, that's also an option, but we'll have to make do this spring.
From a soccer perspective, from Fairview, we have the big goals there now. I have at least 4 teams or 5 that are going to use those. So from our perspective, at least one option, at least I was going to ask if we're able to transport, if you guys will be able to help us transport those big goals up to preservation.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
You have like a
We do, yeah, we can arrange that before the season starts.
to at least use preservation for that temporarily, but the problem with the spring sports and borrowing space from the school is they don't line the school with soccer fields in the spring. So, and they typically have the stadium in use a lot more with their lacrosse. It goes later. The stadium is off limits to us after like May 25th because of graduation and stuff. So it's really limited space at school.
Yeah, and
anyway.
but I think Mark Keener understands that this is a year of exception. That's why I want to have a physical conversation with him, that even though he hasn't lined in the past, what more can be done this year? What more can we have the stadium? So it's not going to be a typical year of how it usually looks, us working with the school. We all understand that this year is and I think that, they'll be asking to use the turf fields at some point too. So I think we're all in this working together with understanding that we're going to try to accommodate as much as we can, anywhere we can.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've been since I've been doing this, I've talked to Keener a lot. Our kids still play at the stadium every time we can. So, but spring is harder. Like I said, the backup plan at their grass fields is not available. But we could ask Keener to line a field up there for us. Maybe that would be an option. But the other thing I was going to ask is, if we really do run into a bind and we have to, let's say, rent out space elsewhere, let's say, for example, from a soccer perspective, I'm not sure what lacrosse has in mind, but like South Point has some soccer fields or whatever, like would that be something that we would get financial assistance from you
I think,
guys?
but before we jump the gun on anything, I would like to get all organizations together, kind of really look at the schedule, how it's going to be, and then we'll make these kind of decisions. It's kind of too hard to kind of answer those questions now before we really see where we can get into, and things like that.
Okay, I was just wondering if that is something that might be, because that might be something that's relevant. If we just can't, we'll try to cram everybody in at preservation with lights or boys' home or the school, that's fine. But if it does come to it that we need to borrow space, that's another option. We just might have to rent some. But didn't know if you guys would be willing to help us with that, if that becomes a topic. But anyway, yeah, not relevant at the moment. So,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Cool.
So, as for the lines that I sent to all the organizations, and you have in front of us, both fields are multi-purpose and have all sport lines on it. But the field below the Rotary Pavilion, so that would be C, that has kind of the blue and yellow lines you can see, those have prominent soccer lines, so they're more visually seen. And then at Field Turf's recommendation, kind of lacrosse lines are in a light green, and he described it to me as, you'll still be able to see it, but they're not as, they don't catch the eye as much, so it's not as distracting. And he described it as like some turf fields, have you seen where it looks like they have like mowed lines? Mm-hmm. That green is like the other green, so it's like a lighter green. So then on the field below so D, it has football, and then red is been prominent, which is unified lacrosse lines with soccer lines in both that green and lighter gray. So you have more prominent soccer on the one field and more prominent lacrosse on the other fields. But this way they can be utilized by all organizations. And so, yeah, I sent it over to them for feedback. Did Vanessa were you able to take a look?
Yeah, I saw it.
So. I will wait for feedback from the organizations. We have some time on this. We don't have to, the lines don't cost anything, so we don't have to decide before we sign the contract with Field Turf. The only thing that we have to decide is like logos cost a little bit, so I asked them for feedback too, if they like the South Fayette on the sidelines or if they wanted to see like a logo on the center field or more the name on the like end zones. That would determine cost, so that would have to kind of be determined here in the next couple weeks.
When we submitted the approvals or the grant requests, was there any sort of specific definition of multi-purpose fields or like how they're supposed to be lined?
Yeah, so when I talked about it in the grant application, I talked about multi-purpose and the number of kids based on all our organizations that would be using these fields. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing, and I think this is the same, I think, forgive me if I'm repeating myself or repeating Vanessa and Steve, but I guess that was the first thing that came to mind is the definition of multi-purpose. What does that mean? Does that mean that we have to paint permanent lines on it, or does that not necessarily, is that a criteria, I guess, for meeting the grant's requirements? But I think traditionally those fields have always been multi-purpose, whether they're painted for soccer, like Field C is only soccer. It has been for multiple years. The other one's painted for lacrosse and football traditionally also. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not multi-purpose, right? So I think that's the one question that comes to mind that we really want to answer. If we want to, do this layout, I mean, that's fine if everybody agrees to it, but I don't necessarily want to do that just because, that shouldn't be the deciding factor is what I'm trying to get at. If that's
The grant application was written that it would have lines for all sports. Yeah. And, this is going to benefit all organizations because I think I've said this before that, typically, your soccer games are on different days than football games. So what may as well have 2 football games going on at the same time on fields that can be utilized and handle it. And then soccer, when the opposite days that they have games, can use both fields for any age. So I think it's.
Well, I think the biggest thing that stands out, I think, if anybody looks at those drawings, that's really busy. So if you go to some other fields I think these are probably more busy than most any fields. That's if you're playing sports on that, it's hard to know which lines you're using. I think just from a starting point, the soccer field, I think this is a small thing we could adjust, but if we're going to leave it that way, there's two fields overlaying each other. They're both yellow. We wouldn't be able to leave it that way. It's just too confusing for a full-size game. The second field is a little bit smaller, going in the same direction, and they're both yellow. That's just way too confusing.
We can change one too. We can change is that U14 that's in the middle, the smaller, is that considered U14?
The U14, U16, that's all full-size fields.
Okay,
So
which the one in the middle?
the one in the middle
It's
is
labeled as mini soccer, but I don't know what age that's for.
the U12 is the one
U12,
that's
okay.
smaller.
So we can change that to like orange.
Yeah, so that would be simple.
Not a problem.
But I think, just from a practicality point of view, it's just really difficult if you're trying to play sports and they're that busy. But I also think, to be considered multi-purpose, to me, in my mind, that doesn't necessarily mean lines. And I was just doing some research online. I'm far from the expert on multi-purpose fields and grants, but I think the point they were trying to make is it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have permanent lines to be considered multi-purpose. For example, cheerleaders are going to use the soccer field. We've always been good neighbors with them. They'll use the soccer field. They don't require lines at all, so it can still be a multi-purpose field, but they don't need them. So same thing for flag football. I think you and I both know that flag football plays in the perpendicular direction, they don't use lines, they use cones. So the soccer field as it stands right now, Field C, will be multi-purpose from that regard. Plus, all the movies in the park, all that stuff, that's all multi-purpose. So I think just based on what my research has said, I think that's not necessarily a criteria for multi-purpose, for permanent lines. So I think that's one thing I think we just want to be careful that we don't make decisions based on that, and we should make the decisions based on what's practical for all the associations, not just mine. I'll give my opinion from the soccer association just because I'm here. Doesn't mean everybody should agree with mine. Obviously, everybody should weigh in, but I don't know. I'm a little bit weary about making decisions based on that and not what's best for the associations. I think that's from a starting point, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
So Dan shared a couple diagrams with me. You want me to plug them in so you can kind of look them up?
Oh, sure.
I can plug in. That's fine. We'll just plug it in. That's computer's not gonna go anywhere. Side. Just an example, right? Dan, so you'd said you had suggested kind of this for one of the fields is like a football lacrosse.
I'm hardly a PowerPoint guy either.
That's
but-
all right. That's all right. It just gives everybody just to give everybody just kind of an idea.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
I think what I'll do next is I'm going to wait for the feedback from the organizations and preferably from your board also, because I'm wanting opinions from boards collectively, not individuals. And then I can also ask Field Turf. I did some research. Multi-purpose can mean an array of things. There's even been where there's baseball field outfields in multi-purpose fields. So it's not an uncommon thing. So I can even see if he has examples of kind of very similar to these layouts in person to provide, because it is out there. Morton Field has baseball fields is also, it's all connected and be used. So before we make any changes on, these aren't set in stone, but I would like to get other feedback from the other organizations, collectively from the soccer board, and I can get real life rendering examples.
Paula, with your experience, is this configuration unusual?
Like I said, when I did research too, I looked up and it can be an array of things, Places that have funding just for soccer fields, yes, it's just lines, but we're not a place that will be used just for soccer.
That's what I'm saying.
So like I said, there's even examples where there's brown in a multi-purpose field that's an infield of a ball field. So it's not uncommon. The wonderful thing about this is turf, that it can be used for all different things. The grant application was written that it would have lines for all fields. Doesn't mean that we can also not do, painted lines. If it's the cross field or the smaller U10 that we want to paint instead, we can do that too. But it was written for multi-purpose, and I would like to get feedback from all organizations.
Gotcha.
I just wanted to share.
Yeah.
Share
absolutely.
it with me.
If you leave that up,
Oh, yeah.
I'll kind of explain kind of the thought process behind, that option, I guess. But I mean, in a good thing with the lines that you have there, it's each field can use. We can have multiple games, on both sides. You have all of our fields or sizes accounted for on both fields. That's great. But for me, I'd rather sacrifice our own, lines on the one field so that we could just have ours on the one because, for a couple of different reasons, but if you're looking at those slides right there, you can at least see that it's just a lot less congested. And I just really can't stress enough from people, from myself using them, from kids using them. If you go up to the stadium, our own stadium, it's really confusing. There's all kinds of lines all over the place. But this layout is kind of clean. I think the one thing that stands out too is the football field. There's that in itself just adds so much of the clutter in itself. So just that alone, if you take that out of the equation, it cleans up a lot of them. So even if we would take one of the football fields out of the equation and just add lacrosse on the soccer side only, that would clean up a lot of the confusion. But I'll give a little bit of a description, and maybe Vanessa and Steve have also kind of explained our thought process too on why we're a little bit concerned about both of the fields being lined for everything. Is, you know, our associations are really complicated. As a scheduler from the soccer side of things, we have probably 40 teams, 40 sets of coaches and teams. And so scheduling just on our own, when we have our own field and lines, can be a burden. We separate, let's say, well, I have a picture here.
Mm-hmm. And it comes to, we're at a turning point from what we have done before in transitioning. Like I said, you know, soccer can use both these fields on a Sunday, so you can have, with those lines, you can have 4 games going at one time, and we could welcome tournaments. You guys can have tournaments, lacrosse can have tournaments. You know, we're kind of shifting from what we used to something new, and this is the opportunity to really, you know, utilize these fields to the maximum capacity that they can be utilized. And yeah, just want to, you know, appreciate the feedback, but I have not received any feedback from any other organizations yet this time for me to really make a, you know, a valid decision.
Right. We need to wait for more input.
Well, I think, and I hear that perspective too, but I think, you know, part of the reservations I have is that while that is a good point, I'm not sure that football is interested in doing those kind of tournaments. I know we historically don't really want to, and even if we wanted to, there is precedent also to, if lacrosse was going to have a tournament on a Saturday, one weekend of the year, for example, you can put chalk down, you can put temporary lines down. So I wouldn't want to necessarily lock into a permanent design on the field if it's only for one weekend of the year.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we want to let lacrosse and football speak for themselves.
Right, that's fine. But I'll give you, well, since I'm here, I'll give you my perspective on why we kind of want to keep them separate too. While it does make sense, and it would be nice for us on Saturdays because our games are on Sundays. It would be nice to have both fields used at the same time for soccer, but I'd rather, in the grand scheme of things, only have the one field for soccer, because you know, we don't necessarily want to be in competition with the other associations. So everything works out pretty good now. Our soccer association goes from, let's say, early August to mid-November. It starts up again in March, ends mid-June, right? That's our time frames. Football is one season. They go from August to, let's say, end of October. That's their season. Lacrosse is, let's say, also March to June time frame. So they're one season each. They're usually on their, as it stands right now, they're on their side, right? We're on our side. I know they're multi-purpose. We've borrowed space as recently as this past season. You know, if we needed space for the hunt that was going on near preservation, right? So we moved our soccer over to the football field. So just because we don't have the lines on the football field doesn't mean we can't use that field for soccer on occasion. Same as football has used the soccer side of things with our field, our lines, when we've had the need. So that's how it stands right now. It works out good because we don't have to barter and bicker about space and time. So what happens if lacrosse wants to? They have Sunday games sometimes. I just don't want to be in competition with them. I'd rather them just have their separate thing. And it works out to me, if you have both of them separate, you know, they have their rights as a default. They would have their rights to the one turf field. We would have rights to the other one per default, right? And we just don't have to necessarily worry about contending because they're both one season. And then the overflow can be all the grass fields, same as it always has been. So there's just, you know, we don't need to be in competition. That's the main
But and
thing.
also the township's growing, the organizations are growing. So yes, as default, you know, one's using the other, but you know, we're not able to build more fields anywhere else. So we have to make these be utilizing. I want someone on these fields on both fields at all times, if possible. You know, rather, you know, I want them to be used.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, I will use our soccer field if it's lined for us. We'll have it every day.
Yeah.
We will have.
And you're
we'll
more
have it
welcome to
every
use
day.
the other one too, and that's what we're trying to do. So, yeah, we look forward to feedback from all the other organizations and your board as a whole. Like I said, these are not locked in, and we have some time. And I'll be having a scheduling meeting with all the organizations here probably towards the end of the month to go over, what the spring looks like and reviewing all of these.
So you plan to have all the organizations together in one room?
Yeah, I always,
The same time?
every spring and before every fall, I do like a scheduling meeting and I get them all in the same room and, yeah.
That sounds like a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, and we already had us all in one room, like I said, October, November, December sometime, so.
So when the decision is made, who makes that decision? Is it collective? Is it a vote? How is that decision? What?
It will come to the Parks and Rec Board, and then to the Board of Commissioners. They don't officially vote on anything, but we can get their blessing. And get your guys' blessing. So, yeah, we'll have a formal approval process. Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Any other open discussion?
I just have one personnel
sorry.
thing.
Yeah.
But we'll do it after, it doesn't have to be recorded, because
okay.
I think it's personal.
Okay. All right.
If you guys, I printed these out because I sent you guys an email, kind of went
Yep.
hand in hand with, I think, Barb's not here, but she kind of was arising questions like.
Mary.
Oh, Mary, sorry, I'm looking at you. I know, I was looking at you. But she just rose questions like, how are we determining on projects and, because, tennis was asking, when it can be made a priority. And we've just been going, so I sent this email to you. This was in the Parks Master Plan, and we created, which majority of you guys were on the committee for, so you voted, you guys
Yeah.
voted
We
for
voted
it.
for it.
Yeah. But it's just the priority list that we've been tackling. And some projects are within, priorities have, more projects in one. But, ironically, and from the Board of Commissioners, she also was asking kind of some of these same questions. So I passed this on. So this has kind of just been our roadmap for the past couple of years that we've been following. And, if we see a project 2 years down the road, we kind of apply for the grants at that time. And so, yeah, so that email I sent you and.
Does it have years on there? Each year?
Not years, just kind of sequences to complete, yeah. And a couple of them, some of them, I'm trying to think.
Because the tennis people are going to ask the same question. Hey, when is it?
Right, so I can tell you, I have been writing a award application. We are 1 through 13, or 14 pretty much. Has been completed, in the works, design, grant, pending things. I know, Venkat, for that cricket pitch, we remember we did research on a boys' home, and it wasn't feasible because we didn't know that there was marshland that we couldn't dig into. So some of the projects unfortunately didn't happen because, once we started digging into it, not feasible. The number 9 has this, or number 10 has the sidewalk, was the paving of the road, and then the sidewalks, we kind of broke that up into separate projects. So, but this has been the driving that. So technically, kind of tennis courts are next that we would start the planning process for. Yeah, but then you all know the process of that. It just takes time.
Takes time.
Yeah, yeah.
Venkat, if you don't have the, I know it says see page this, see page that. I have the actual document at home.
And it's
I can
all on the
bring it.
website too, and it's
It's on the
broken
website,
down,
yeah.
and the website has the full plan, and then it's broken down per park. So you could click on the one for Boys Home, which would pull up all the Boys Home, all Fairview, and everything, so. Yeah.
Paula, I noticed in the master plan, there was a notation about an indoor community facility at Fairview Park, kind of up on the hill above the tanks, the water tanks.
It mainly said that through survey, that was the number one thing that was mentioned, that the township needs to explore possibilities. Up there would be a cool place, but it just matter of getting utilities up there and things like that. That would be like if we won $1 billion lottery or something.
You get some of that daycare money.
Eh. You're funny. So yeah, so I guess, you know, there wasn't necessarily any money put in to the budget this year for like specifically tennis court planning or anything like that, but we always have just a little bit of engineering money in general that you can start, you know, feasibility, you know, saying Fairview's not feasible because of the other plans in the works and space and, you know, things like that. So we can probably, you know, start a little bit of the process and see if there's any grant applications that, you know, engineers can do preliminary drawings for, so things like that. So, yep. Before we know, we'll have to update this. We'll have to start
I'll have to
updating.
start another one, yeah, we're on,
Yeah.
what, 12 of 13 of 20, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So much things.
Anything else prior to adjournment?
that's it.
Move to adjourn. Next meeting would be February 3rd. Anybody second? Motion to adjourn.
Deb.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Adjourn. All right, see everybody
Thank you.
February 3rd.